Okay, so the question of which difficulty in a Resident Evil game is the hardest has been something that has been discussed for a long time. Usually it bounces from game to game. When a new release comes out, people discuss the hardest difficulty and compare it to older ones, but when these discussions happen, one difficulty in a certain game is always mentioned, and it's the Inferno difficulty in Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now, for anyone who knows me, I like playing these games on the hardest difficulty and doing ridiculous things to make it even harder, and Inferno is really tough. Like, it has its kind of trade-offs that make it not as bad as people would say, but at the same time, it's punishing for a lot of reasons. So we'll go over kind of what Inferno mode kind of involves and what's kind of the ideal way of beating it, and then kind of discuss what I think about it compared to other difficulties in the series. Okay, so a brief rundown on how Inferno mode plays out. So it is similar to the Nightmare mode in Resident Evil 3, which is harder than hardcore. It kind of remixes enemy spawns and item spawns, so they're not in the same spots they would usually be in, and you just get less resources from putting gunpowder together. There's less healing around, but for the most part it is just a harder version of hardcore with different spawns involved. Then upon beating Nightmare mode, you unlock Inferno. Now Inferno is the hardest difficulty in RE3, and it is very similar to Nightmare, but there are some slight differences that make it harder. So the main one being enemies are even harder to deal with, so they take more damage and they do more damage. If you get grabbed by a zombie in Inferno and you have to like the button mash to get out of it, 9 times out of 10 you're gonna die. Like, it's so painfully slow to get out of a grab in Inferno that you'll just die, because it takes a while to get out of it. Not every hit is a one shot. Like, if you get hit by a crawler zombie or something like that, it's not going to kill you, but if you get grabbed, you're pretty much done for unless you can really press the button. On top of that, there are less typewriters, so less opportunities to save the game, and less item boxes, so you kind of have to manage your inventory a little bit better, because you aren't going to get as many opportunities to store stuff, and if you do need to store stuff, there's going to be a lot of backtracking, which could result in obviously dying, and that can be a bit of a nuisance. But the main thing that really makes Inferno harder than Nightmare is the fact that auto-save is completely disabled the entire time. So yeah, there's no saving automatically, you have to manually save, and obviously there's less typewriters in Inferno, so you really have to go a bit longer before you can save the game again. They're always in the same spots, whichever run you do, so you can kind of remember where they are, and as long as you can make it back to it, you can save. But yeah, for the most part, there are long stretches where you just aren't going to be able to save the game, and if you do try and backtrack, there is obviously the chance you die, and if you do die, you get kind of taken all the way back to when you last saved the game, so that can make things a lot more difficult, especially considering how much damage you take and how much damage zombies do take to kill in Inferno. On top of that, you have Nemesis, and Nemesis is only really present in like the first chunk of the game when he's like the pursuer type, and he is insanely fast. If you've seen clips of Inferno mode Nemesis, you'll know what I mean. He just full sprints, and you really have to know how to use the dodge. That's pretty much the big thing for Inferno. You have to master the dodge, because if you get grabbed, there's a big chance you'll die or get put into danger state, and it can be a nuisance. But on top of that, if you do get that perfect dodge, you do get that bullet time kind of brief window where you do more damage, and that can help take things out fairly quickly. So mastering the dodge is probably the biggest boundary to beating this mode. I guess some positives to making the mode not feel as daunting as other people would say is, one, you get the Magnum and some extra inventory space pretty much straight away. If you've done some of the additional challenges in the game, you also have another additional couple of slots in your inventory, so you can pretty much carry everything you need without worrying about a box, which is good. So that always helps out. On top of that, again, if you have managed to do some additional challenges throughout the game, you'll have access to like the bonus weapons. Some of them are good, some of them are kind of like 50-50, but some of them are quite useful. And you'll also get access to the coins as well. And there's 3 different coins in the game. There is an attack coin, a defense coin, and a recovery coin. So obviously attack increases your damage output, defense increases your HP, and recovery grants you a small amount of regen over time. But yeah, if you play like me and you don't use like bonus weapons and stuff, you are pretty much stuck with the starting pistol and the Magnum with your extra inventory slots, and that's pretty much it. Obviously you get access to a shotgun fairly quickly in this game, so that helps a lot. There's a lot of gunpowder and herbs in the first kind of area, so you can kind of get yourself set up ready. But it's ruthless. Like, the zombies are aggressive in this game compared to RE2. They hit a lot harder in this difficulty, And obviously after a certain point you'll have Nemesis chasing you as well, so you gotta really know how to dodge. But there is one big thing if you are going to try and attempt this mode on a new game file. One, it's only really the introduction part of the game and then the final fight of the game that are really hard. Now you have the benefit with Resident Evil 3 that the remake is not very long at all. It's maybe an hour or two. And that makes it obviously a shorter experience. A natural playthrough is probably going to be 2 to 3 hours, so if you're trying to run through it effectively, you're looking at 1 to 2. And that's a good thing, because obviously it's not going to be as long as other games, so you're more likely to get through it quicker, which is always good, because obviously ammo and healing may run out, so having the game be short does kind of allow you to kind of experiment a bit better, figure out when to and when not to fight, and just kind of manage your inventory a bit better. The middle sections of the game, mainly the RPD and the hospital section as Carlos, they're quite easy to do. He gets an assault rifle and a shit ton of bullets. I don't find his sequences hard at all, especially the RPD, because it's the same exact layout as the 2 remake, which means as long as you know where you're going, you can pretty much get through it without really having to kill many things. And then the hospital, again, if you know where the parts are, which I don't think they changed drastically in Inferno, especially the key items, you'll probably get through it, again, fairly quickly. And the only bit in the hospital that's going to give you the issue is probably like the holdout sequence near the end of it. That can be tough because there's a lot of enemies and there's a few hunters that spawn, but other than that, I don't find the middle section of the game too difficult. As for the Jill sequences, so you got the main first part of the game in downtown Raccoon City, which is like where you'll probably spend most of the time. And again, it's a big opportunity to get set up. There's not a crazy amount of enemies. Obviously Nemesis does come into it at some point and he can be a bit of a nuisance, but again, if you learn the dodge, he kind of becomes trivial again. He doesn't really hit you. And all the way up until the train crash, that's probably the prime time to get everything you need, because while you can go back through the hospital as Jill, you don't really want to. There's not enough in there to go back for. You already have the Magnum, and there's hunters and palehead enemies in there, I think, on Inferno. So it's genuinely not worth the waste of ammo to go back through. The biggest issue points for Jill are mainly the 3rd and 4th fight with Nemesis. Now the 3rd fight with Nemesis is basically the 2nd one again, but there's additional enemies in there, and again, I believe on Inferno and Nightmare, it replaces some of the normal zombies that spawn in with paleheads, which are obviously tankier zombies that can kind of regenerate the HP and come back, and they can be a nightmare, so you kind of want to save the Magnum for that. And the boss fights, I don't really see much use out of the Magnum in the early game, unless you're just trying to get through a bit fairly quickly. But really, it's the final fight with Nemesis that's just a nightmare. So obviously that's when he's in his massive form and you gotta use the railgun to take him out. And pretty much what he does is when he does an attack, it pretty much strings together like 3 or 4 in a row, and you have to dodge every single one of them. If one hits you, the other one is the second follow-up attack is gonna hit you as well, so you're dead. And it's a nightmare to deal with on Inferno. My only real advice is to try and practice it, maybe on Nightmare. I know on Inferno it's faster, but at least you'll have the autosave. Pretty much what you want to do on an Inferno run is save the final save for that, but that fight is an absolute nightmare on the hardest difficulty. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it. That's kind of my thoughts on Inferno. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and if there's another difficulty you think is harder, do let me know. And as always, thank you for watching. Remember to leave a like on the video and subscribe for more RE content, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.